Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Before we jump into things today, just a quick reminder, please make sure to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession channel and our newsletter so you never miss out on any of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely hit subscribe. You do not want to miss what we're tracking this season.
Exactly. So imagine looking at your calendar, right, and realizing that in exactly 3 months, you have to play the All Blacks 4 times in a row.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and you have to cross 3 different continents in just a matter of weeks. And, oh, by the way, half of your starting lineup is currently sitting in a hospital gown.
It's pretty wild to even think about.
It is. But here's the thing. Today, we are looking at this mounting existential crisis for the South African national rugby team. But we're looking at it as an incredible opportunity. It's a puzzle for the coaching staff.
Right.
We're pulling our insights directly from just a fantastic, really thorough breakdown by Craig Lewis in the South African. He outlined this, catastrophic injury list for the Springboks ahead of their 2026 campaign.
Yeah, Craig's piece was excellent. It's a fascinating and, frankly, kind of a terrifying scenario if you're Rassie Erasmus or, part of that coaching staff.
Absolutely.
When you actually map out the personnel losses against the sheer physical demands of the schedule they have coming up, I mean, it moves way past the standard injury headache. It's unprecedented territory, but like you said, a massive test of their methods.
Yeah, and our mission today is to kind of cut through the noise, figure out exactly who is on this growing injury list, and really analyze the hidden biomechanical severity of these absences. We want to explore how on earth Rassie navigates a 2026 fixture list that looks like it was designed to break human beings.
It really does.
Right. And we want your thoughts on this too. So let's start with the definite absences. The players who are unequivocally missing in action. Craig Lewis starts with Ethan Hooker, the young center.
Oh, yeah.
He recently dislocated his shoulder after scoring a try against the Ospreys, and he's out for 2 to 3 months.
Which, it might seem like a standard mid-length recovery on paper, but context is everything here.
How so?
Well, when you have a young, highly touted talent like Hooker, those early season matches are crucial incubators. You don't just throw a rookie into a test match against New Zealand.
Right. Of course not.
They need reps in the defensive system. So a dislocated shoulder isn't just a physical setback. It completely derails the momentum of integrating him into the senior tactical structures.
Because the Springboks defensive system relies so heavily on absolute trust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The defensive line speed they play with requires you to trust that the man inside and outside of you is going to make the hit.
Yeah.
And a shoulder joint is notoriously complex. It sacrifices stability for mobility. When a player dislocates it, the delicate balance of ligaments and muscles is compromised.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, rebuilding the physical stability is one thing, but rebuilding the subconscious trust to throw that shoulder into a 110 kilogram forward running at full tilt, that takes significant time.
For a young guy, that hesitation could be huge.
Career-altering, really, at the international level.
Well, and Craig Lewis's piece really drives home how heavy these losses are when we get to the tight 5. I mean, R.G. Snyman.
The absolute giant.
Right. He suffered an ACL rupture playing for Leinster and is facing a 6 to 9 month recovery. So that essentially rules him out for the entire 2026 international season.
And this is a monumental tactical loss. If we look at how the Springboks play, Snyman is an anomaly.
Yeah, he really is.
He gives you the physical intimidation and set-piece anchoring of a traditional lock, but he has the handling skills of, a loose forward.
I mean, he's the guy who takes contact with 3 defenders and somehow magically pops the ball out the back of his hand to keep the attack alive.
Precisely. That offloading ability in heavy traffic fundamentally changes the shape of the defense. When he's on the field, opposition defenses have to commit an extra man to the tackle area.
Just to wrap the ball up.
Right. With him gone, defenses can fan out wider. And regarding the injury itself, for a man of his immense size, we're talking 6'9" and over 120 kilograms, the ACL is the primary braking system of the knee.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight to stop.
Exactly. When a player that heavy tries to change direction or decelerate, the rotational force going through that joint is staggering. Tearing that ligament means a complete biomechanical rebuild from the ground up.
And just to compound the misery in the second row, Lood Jager is also on the definite casualty list.
Yeah.
He's back in South Africa recovering from hip surgery, expected to be sidelined for at least another 4 months.
So now you've lost another elite world-class lock. And what's fascinating here is the specific impact on the team's operating system.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, if Snyman provides the dynamic, unstructured chaos, Jager is the navigation system. He is traditionally the line-out caller, the tactical brain of the forward pack's set piece.
I want to dig into the hip surgery aspect of that because when you think of a lock, you think of shoulders and knees. Why is a hip injury so devastating for a second row forward?
Because the hip is the primary hinge for power generation. Think about the scrum. A lock's job is to transfer power from their legs, through their hips, up their spine, and into the props in front of them.
Right, like an engine.
Exactly. If there is any instability or weakness in the hip complex, that power transfer leaks. The scrum goes backward, and in the line-out, the explosive hip extension is what allows a lock to launch themselves into the air. Without absolute hip integrity, Jager simply cannot perform the core functions of his position.
So replacing Snyman and Jager isn't just a matter of plugging the next two biggest guys into the depth chart.
Not at all.
It's like the Springboks are a heavy-duty transport truck, and right before a cross-country haul, they've lost their main engine cylinders. How do you pull that weight without your core power?
That's a perfect analogy. You're losing the offload threat and the line-out intelligence simultaneously.
It completely changes the synergy of the pack, which actually brings us to the next section of Craig Lewis's breakdown. And honestly, this might be the most stressful part of the entire deep dive.
Oh, the 50-50s.
Yeah, we're moving from the definite absences to what I'm calling the 50-50 ward.
Yeah.
But really quickly, before we get into these names, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession channel and newsletter if you haven't yet. And also, drop a comment below. Let us know your thoughts on this injury list. How would you handle this if you were the coach?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your opinions on this. The sheer volume of players in this 50-50 category is what turns this from an injury problem into a full-blown coaching crisis.
Right. It's like running a high-end restaurant where you don't know if your executive chef, your sous chef, and your lead server are going to show up until 10 minutes before dinner service.
You don't know whether you should be prepping for a 5-course tasting menu or just making burgers.
Exactly. Let's look at the names. First, Frans Malherbe. There is, quote, hope for a test comeback this year, but it's completely unclear if he'll fully recover from back and neck issues that have threatened to force him into early retirement.
Malherbe's situation highlights the dark arts and the terrifying physical reality of the front row. He is a tight head prop, which is arguably the most physically demanding position in professional sports.
For sure.
The compressive forces going through a tight head's neck and spine during a scrum engagement are astronomical. You have two packs of forwards combining for over 1,800 kilograms colliding, and the tight head is the anchor point absorbing the brunt of that force.
It's essentially dealing with a low-speed car crash every few minutes.
That is a very accurate way to look at it. When you have chronic issues in the cervical spine or the lower back, it's not just about a player toughing it out.
Right, it's much deeper than pain tolerance.
We are talking about long-term neurological health. Nerves get compressed, power output drops. Having Malherbe as a 50-50 proposition is terrifying because you cannot hide a tight head prop who isn't at 100%.
Yeah, if his neck gives out, the whole thing collapses.
Exactly. Your entire set piece disintegrates.
Then you have Pieter-Steph du Toit, intensive rehab underway after a shoulder operation, and Craig Lewis uses the phrase cautious optimism that he might be ready.
Cautious optimism. From a coaching perspective, that phrase is a tactical nightmare.
Wait, hold on. I'm putting myself in Rassie Erasmus's shoes here, and I have to push back on this idea that cautious optimism is a nightmare. Surely, as a coach, you'd rather have a 50% chance of getting a former World Player of the Year back on the pitch than a 0% chance. Right?
So, yeah.
I mean, if he's definitely out, he's out. If he's 50-50, at least there's hope.
It's a completely logical way to look at it from a fan's perspective, but inside a high-performance environment, hope is not a strategy.
Okay.
It actually complicates preparation exponentially. When a player like R.G. Snyman is definitively out, you grieve the loss, you draw a line under it, and you pivot. You build a completely new game plan.
Right.
Your training reps are focused, your defensive spacing is set.
But with a 50-50 player.
With a 50-50 player, you are forced to develop dual strategies. You have to split your repetition time in training between the starter who might play and the backup who will play if the starter fails a late fitness test.
Oh, man. I didn't even think about the training reps.
Yeah, you hold off on finalizing line-out calls or defensive trigger movements because the personnel might change on Thursday morning. It drains mental energy from the entire squad.
That makes perfect sense. It's the uncertainty that creates the paralysis. And that paralysis is spreading because the source points out an entire contingent from the Sharks who are in this exact same limbo.
Right.
Ofeli Fassi is a major doubt due to shoulder surgery. And then there's even Etzebeth, the enforcer. He suffered a hip injury in his comeback match against Canuck.
And Etzebeth's situation is a textbook example of the vicious cycle of sports rehabilitation.
How so?
When a player is rushing to get back for a massive international season, the margins are razor thin. What often happens in a comeback match isn't that the original injury flares up, it's that a compensatory injury occurs.
Oh, because their biomechanics are out of whack.
Exactly. If you are subconsciously protecting a sore knee or a tight hamstring, you alter your running gait.
Yeah, you favor the good leg.
Right. You change how you drop your body weight into a tackle. That places unnatural stress on other joints in the kinetic chain, in this case, the hip. And once the hip goes, as we discussed with Jager, your ability to generate power is severely compromised.
And the list of guys racing against time just keeps growing. I mean, Bonji Mbonambi, Grant Williams, Jordan Hendricks, all expected to miss the remainder of their current club campaigns. All 50-50 for the national team.
It's a massive list.
We are talking about over a half dozen foundational pieces in complete limbo. But here is where this deep dive takes a turn from concerning to just potentially catastrophic.
Here we go.
Because if the Springboks had a light transitional year ahead of them, maybe you could manage this. But we need to talk about the 2026 gauntlet.
The reality of what this depleted squad is about to face is sobering. The timing of this injury crisis could not be worse.
Let's walk through it. The season kicks off in exactly 2 months, on June 20th, with a quote-unquote warm-up against the Barbarians in Goiberha. Then they roll right into the July tests. England in Johannesburg, Scotland in Pretoria, and Wales in Durban.
That is an incredibly heavy opening month. You're playing 3 top-tier Northern Hemisphere teams, each bringing a distinctly different tactical challenge.
Right.
England will bring a suffocating kicking game. Scotland will try to play with wit. Wales will drag you into a physical arm wrestle, and the Springboks are going to have to navigate these shifts while integrating entirely new combinations in the forward pack.
All under the intense pressure of a home crowd that expects absolute dominance.
Exactly.
And that opening month, that's just the appetizer. Because then we hit the main course, the All Blacks. And this isn't your standard 2-game series. It is a marathon. 4 consecutive test matches against New Zealand.
4 straight test matches against the All Blacks is an absolute anomaly in the modern era.
Johannesburg, then Cape Town, then back to Johannesburg. And then for the 4th game, on September 12th, they play the All Blacks in Baltimore over the United States.
Just the physical and psychological intensity required for one match against New Zealand leaves players drained for weeks. Doing it 4 times in a row is going to test the absolute limits of human endurance.
Because by game 3 or 4, there are no secrets left, right?
Exactly. Any trick play, any subtle line-out variation you had planned, it's on tape. It comes down to sheer physical attrition and squad depth. Do the Springboks have the healthy bodies to rotate the squad so they aren't fielding exhausted players?
And we haven't even factored in the travel. Look at the geographical whiplash here. You're starting at altitude in Johannesburg where the air is thin. Then you drop down to sea level in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Then you climb back up to altitude in Joburg.
Yeah.
And then for game 4, you fly across the Atlantic to the East Coast of the United States. Given the sheer travel demands, how is physical recovery even mathematically possible for a team that is already this banged up?
That is the million-dollar question. When we talk about travel at this level, we aren't just talking about a bit of jet lag. We are talking about severe travel fatigue that actively works against the healing process.
What happens to a rugby player's body on a flight like that? I mean, even if they are in business class, they are still massive human beings.
That's just it. You take a 6'8", 120-kilogram forward carrying micro tears in his muscles and deep bruising from a test match, and you fold him into a pressurized cabin for upwards of 16 hours.
Ouch.
Right. The cabin pressure and lack of movement cause venous blood pooling in the lower extremities.
Which slows down the recovery.
Drastically. It slows down the flushing of lactic acid and inflammatory markers. Furthermore, crossing that many time zones violently disrupts the circadian rhythms.
Oh, it messes with their sleep.
It messes with their sleep, but more importantly, it disrupts the endocrine system. The hormonal release of testosterone and human growth hormone, which naturally occurs during deep sleep, gets completely thrown out of sync. Yeah, so when you have a squad full of 50-50 players carrying knocks, that travel schedule is actively deteriorating their bodies.
Which makes the next leg of the tour seem almost cruel. Because after they finish with the All Blacks in Baltimore, Craig Lewis notes they have a once-off test against the Wallabies in Perth, Australia.
Yep.
They from the east coast of the U.S. straight to the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's the Nations Championship in Europe in November. Italy, France, Ireland, and Twickenham. I'm completely exhausted just reading it aloud.
It necessitates a complete shift in the narrative of the season. With a fully healthy squad, the question is, can our starters win every week?
Right.
But with this sprawling injury list and this brutal schedule, the central question becomes, can this squad simply survive?
It's essentially an ongoing triage operation.
Exactly. Rassie Erasmus is going to have to manage player loads with meticulous, almost clinical detachment. You might see him field entirely different starting 15s in consecutive weeks, purely to prevent catastrophic fatigue injuries.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring it all together. We're looking at a Springbok setup facing an incredibly daunting injury crisis. You've got definite long-term casualties like RG Snyman and Lood Jager.
Yeah, losing your core.
Right, which effectively rips the tactical core right out of the forward pack. Then you've got this agonizing 50-50 ward filled with foundational players, keeping the coaching staff paralyzed. And all of this is crashing headfirst into a 2026 fixture list that demands absolute peak physical condition.
It is the definition of a perfect storm. But if we look at the history and the culture of this specific Springbok environment, extreme adversity is often the catalyst for their greatest innovations.
Oh, I like that.
And I think that leaves you, the listener, with a really fascinating prospect to mull over as this season approaches.
What's that?
Will this unprecedented injury crisis force Rassie Erasmus to dig deeper into the South African talent pool than he ever originally intended? Out of sheer necessity, because the present stars are too bruised to take the field, we might see him unearth and battle-harden the next generation of Springbok legends. He could effectively fast-track the future of South African rugby years ahead of schedule.
I love that perspective. It's so positive.
Yeah.
The current machine is missing cylinders, so maybe it's time to just build a completely new kind of engine.
Exactly.
It's going to be an absolutely wild ride tracking how they manage this. Remember to let us know your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button for the Rugby Obsession channel and newsletter. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.